Hey everyone, hope your day is going well. We are back with another reaction. I saw this video pop up onto my feed this morning. I said, let me check this out. Paul McCartney reflecting on his feud with Yoko Ono over the Beatles split. Well, this is a topic I'm not too familiar with yet when it comes to the deep dive I've been doing into the Beatles, checking out interviews, a lot of songs on YouTube, full album reactions on Patreon. I have watched the Get Back documentary as well, which this is one of the images we're seeing here. Of course, you notice that she's always there, right? They couldn't be pulled apart, John and Yoko. Like the other partners, like Linda and all, they came to visit as well. You see them in the documentary. But Yoko, she was right there by his side, man. You couldn't almost play the guitar, right? She was just holding on to his arm. So let me hear. I imagine this will be clips of different interviews of over the years because I imagine that the media had opinions over this. Fans probably already have them too, right? Because, it's been so long. And we're going to hear from Paul. So I imagine this will be questions about that same topic over and over again, I believe. That's just speculation. Let's go.
For all that period when people were blaming you for the breakup of the Beatles.
Oh, we got Jonathan Ross.
I've been blamed, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 years now.
So you were aware of that going on? You were aware
Oh,
that's what
I was
people were
fully
saying?
aware of it because it was like they was jabbing me all the time.
So when you met Yoko, she claimed she didn't know who the Beatles were, but meanwhile she knew who the Beatles were because
met him.
She met you.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I have like my version of the story.
What is your version?
My version is that we were in London and Yoko came around to my house, knocking on the door. Someone said, there's this Japanese lady outside there. I said, okay, let her in. She came in and she said, it's John Cage's birthday and us artists want to collect a bunch of manuscripts to give him for his, whatever it was, 60th or something birthday.
Right.
And I thought immediately, I don't really want to do this.
Right.
I said, but my friend John might.
Right.
And that's my recollection that I then said, and he lives here, and she went to see him.
The song,
See, everybody has their first impression and things that linger on in your memory. And somewhere between all those stories, the closest thing to the truth will lie, at least about first meeting her. That's interesting. How they started up with an interview with Jonathan Ross and Yoko herself. I mean, she's like 92 years old right now, right?
Get Back. When you were recording it, Yoko was in the studio. And every time you sang Get Back, John accused you of staring at Yoko. And he took it as an insult.
Those were very paranoid times.
I know.
And let's face it, we didn't welcome Yoko in the studio.
I know.
Because we thought it was a guy thing. And if she wants
but I get that, though. You really did. This is, you're trying to work, right? And usually you don't really let other people in, that don't have to be there, except other musicians and people for production and here for the film crew and stuff. It would get under my skin too. I think, being a guy, especially when you're younger, I don't think I would have been very welcome either. I gotta admit that at least. Like, come on, man. We're trying to play here. We're trying to make music.
In on the session, it's something that we wouldn't have done. Our girlfriends or wives wouldn't have done that.
Control room for a quick visit.
Right.
But actually sit in the studio with us, it was like, no, excuse me, we're working.
Did you have the guts to say that to John?
As I said in the beginning, right? We saw in the Get Back documentary, sometimes the partners come for a visit. Just come quick visit. You take the kids. Hey, hi, how are you? And then you leave, right? You listen to whatever you recorded that day. But she was in every frame, right? And it was cut together from how many 100 hours? Like 140 hours or 160 hours, and we got like, what was it, 9 hours. I want to see the 100 something hours remaining.
Oh, excuse me. We're working.
Did you have the guts to say that to John?
No.
You did not.
Yeah,
You had
said
it was kind of obvious, though.
Yeah,
It's like they're going overboard.
you send out
about
signals.
it. But John always does, you know. You can't go saying, be sensible about it and don't bring it to meetings.
And it was an unspoken rule that you wouldn't sit in on a session. But so Yoko was doing it. So I think it created uncomfortable moments.
It's difficult starting right from scratch with Yoko there, because I started writing songs about white walls, just because I think John and Yoko would like that, you know.
This is not an ordinary relationship. She's not an ordinary woman. You've got to admit that.
Yes, but weren't you acting out passive-aggressively? You're sitting in the studio, you're just steaming. Rather than saying, John, in a kind of a loving way, this is hurting me. I can't work this way to have someone observing. Everyone was just kind of sniping.
We were just...
Yeah, it's easy going back and, retroactively, oh, yeah, you could have done that, Paul. Yeah, well, we're young guys, we're working. Sure, we could have been more mature, right? But that is, hindsight is 2020, man. Come on. Like I said, we evolved that way. We're talking about this so many years later. Of course, there's always things you want to do differently in life, but this is just the way it is. Yeah.
Fuming.
Right.
Was
And
John-
sulking and being kind of,
Did John ever say, look, I'm bringing, he didn't ask permission to do it?
No, he didn't. The thing is, it was really just the initial shock of Yoko sitting on one of the amps.
Right.
Excuse me, that's my amp. She couldn't use a stool.
Oh, I think it would be mind-blowing, Paul.
It was.
still
It was
has a little bit of
mind-blowing.
that sting.
But
You've never really blamed Yoko for the breakup, as a lot of people did, have you?
No, I think, at the beginning it was difficult because John in particular was ready to do something else. And when Yoko came along, part of her attraction, I think, was the sort of avant-garde side of things, which she was famous for and still is. So she showed him another way to be that was very attractive to him. And I could see that, she's just sort of said, well, no, look, how about this? Don't you like this? Are you just a rock and roller?
and John loved strong women.
Yes.
His mother had been a strong woman. His auntie who brought him up had been a strong woman. And bless her, but his first wife wasn't. She'd once said to me, all I want is a sort of a guy who wants a pipe and slippers.
Right.
Come
Stay
home and do that. And I thought, whoa,
that's not going to work.
You got the wrong guy.
And so John had met up with Yoko,
And so I think it was time for John certainly to leave.
My feeling was he had to clear the decks too. Yeah. Because if he used to work with Yoko, he couldn't have these sort of Beatle-like appendages.
Yeah.
Coming around with him.
Because
he had to give his life to Yoko. Yeah. This was the nature of the relationship, I think.
Nature of her demand, you think?
No, his demand. People get that wrong, John was hopelessly in love with Yoko,
See, but their point is that they...
Yeah. Wasn't that obvious? But weren't they all ready to move on from the Beatles? Like George was ready to do his own thing. John definitely was. Wasn't Paul, and I don't know if Ringo was either. Because, you watch the Get Back documentary, there's the nicknames, right? You have the Quiet Beatle that was usually attributed to George, right? That was his nickname, the Quiet Beatle. But then if you look at the Get Back documentary, you say, hey, wait a second. It's almost like Ringo should be named that. Am I wrong in thinking that? At least if you just watch that documentary, if you don't know anything else about it, it's like, the Quiet Beatle, that's obvious. It's Ringo.
That wrong, John was hopelessly in love with Yoko,
See, but their point is that they're trying to, be as near together as they can. They want to stay together, those two. So it's all right, let the young lovers stay together. But it's not that bad, We got a lot out of Beatles. So that I think John's saying now, obviously it came to a push. between Yoko and the Beatles. It's Yoko, you know.
But she certainly didn't break the group up. The group was breaking up.
There it is.
And
there
I
it
think
is. There it
she
is.
attracted
the definitive
John
answer.
so much to another way of life.
I think we would have all continued the Beatles, but Yoko came along. John fell wildly in love with her.
Oh.
He needed a big, big change in his life, and he got it.
We're changing it up? Or maybe she accelerated it. Maybe she was an accelerant or part of an accelerant, right? It was going to happen, but maybe it's sped up.
In love with her. He needed a big, big change in his life, and he got it. He came to live in New York. He kind of threw over all his English contacts and everything, and you can't blame him. That's what he wants to do in his life. So we had to kind of fade into the background to allow them to have their relationship. What are we going to do, ringing him up? Hey, John, hey, come and see me. Leave Yoko. That obviously never going to happen.
Hey, we all have those times, when we're younger, you hang out with the boys, or I don't know how it is for women. I can only speak for the men. You hang out with the same group of guys every day, and then one of them gets a girlfriend. You don't see them for months, man. They don't even come out their room anymore. And then when it's over, you see them peeping out. They come back again. Come on, fellas.
Yeah, John never had another songwriter other than you, right? Did he ever write with anyone?
Yoko.
Yoko, okay, but other than Yoko, you were the only.
I think, yeah, possibly. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's true. It's near enough true. Besides Yoko, I think I was the only other person who wrote.
Yeah. Eventually, you even came to say that you feel Yoko was instrumental in John's solo career because the inspiration for Imagine and all of that, you feel came from Yoko, that was his muse, so to speak.
That he then went on to do very successfully and had a sort of second part to his
Interesting,
career.
he said
writing
this white
things
wall
like
thing,
Imagine
right?
and doing Give Peace a Chance. I don't think he would have done that without Yoko. She was taking him in a complete...
Wait a second, that white walls thing that he said in the Get Back documentary. And this is later, right? Well, was he predicting the future? Wait a second, is my mind going crazy right now? He said, I want to sing about white walls because I'm looking at them. And now, I actually never saw the video for Imagine. I actually never saw that video.
It's a chance. I don't think he would have done that without Yoko. She was taking him in a completely new direction.
Right.
Sort of avant-garde, all stuff we'd liked, all stuff we'd admired in other people, but suddenly he had a ride on this bus.
Interesting.
Before Lennon's death, he and Yoko lived in New York, where she managed their business affairs, and rumors of a strained relationship with McCartney persisted. Recently, McCartney and his wife, Linda, met with Yoko for a reunion. Should not everyone have been surprised? I mean, are you...
That's what everyone seems to think. Yoko and I are sort of at war, I think it's based on events of the last kind of 10 years. No, during the last year or so, we've had a better relationship than we've ever had, probably. Yeah. We just find we're suddenly able to talk to each other. It's a weird thing, really, but she's a nice lady.
We didn't know her too well, really, until quite recently, until maybe
a few years ago.
80s, beginning of the 80s, when I just thought, well, maybe I've misunderstood. Maybe it's my mistake, not hers. So I telephoned her and started talking to her about just things generally. She said, "Why are you telephoning?" And I said, well, I think I've misunderstood you, and I think I've made a big mistake. And as you were John's wife, and I was very fond of John, I feel that he would have liked me to telephone you and kind of say hello and see what's going on. And she said, well, don't do me any favors, don't do it out of pity or don't sympathy. I don't want that, I don't want charity. Which at first I thought, but I had to say, no, she's right. She's right. I thought she was a hard woman. I don't think she is now. I think she's just the opposite. I think she's a very loving, caring woman. I thought she was pushy.
which I think's wrong. I don't think she is. I think she's just herself. She's determined more than some other people to be herself. Some people will just give in.
In this reasonably bizarre clip.
Wow, that's a nice insight there. You're not only about another person, but also coming to that realization yourself. There's growth in both ways there. Wow, that was beautiful, man.
When the reporter informs Sean and Yoko that Paul McCartney has just been knocked off, what he actually means to say is that Paul's current record has slipped a bit in the charts. In view of John's murder, of course, it may have been a poor turn of phrase.
Paul McCartney's just been knocked off, and you dance going to number 6.
Lovely.
I'm still rising.
Sorry, Paul. Sorry.
How do you feel about that?
I feel terrific.
Did you in fact laugh at her years later when she said, I didn't know who Jean was, I don't know Beatles, I never heard? You knew that was not true.
I don't know, man. I tell you, you know, live and let live. It's too sort of, life's too short for all that stuff. We've been through.
But you also have to share, you have to call her.
We can work it out. Life's too short to fuss and fight. Try to see it my way. This song is very apt for this situation. Try to see it my way instead of seeing it your way. But they're just ping-ponging back and forth over the years, and people's opinion change, and in the moment. And this always gets recorded, of course, when you're Paul McCartney. And, it's just, we change from day to day sometimes, with our opinions, and we look at certain things, but then somebody else says another thing, and then the whole thing is reignited. So, yeah.
Regularly to do Beatles business, right? So you have to get along with her.
Yeah, to some degree.
So if in fact you said here today that Yoko in fact wanted you sexually, and in fact knew who the Beatles were, it would probably screw up your business dealings with her.
I'd be dead meat.
Yeah, you would be dead meat in those meetings.
No, it's, we haven't got the greatest relationship, that's true, but we get on. We're okay.
You do?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
We had our riches, we might be rich, but that's never against this world. Stand never stand. It's a privilege to know it.
Here tonight, it's a privilege to come along and to do this. John, no matter what people thought of him from minute to minute, was a very, very beautiful person. And it's an honor to be able to do this with Yoko and Sean.
May I say this, that I really think it's grand that he's come here, and I'm very happy about that, and I think that Joe would have been very pleased.
Later on, we suddenly sort of thought, you know what, John's in love with this girl. If he wants to bring her in the studio, we've got to cope with that. And we learned to cope with it. And, I now feel that he had the right to do that. It might have been better if he'd been a little bit more diplomatic and sort of says, hey guys, I'd love her to be, I really love her and I just want to be near her all the time.
Right.
But we had to figure that out. I was totally in love with her.
Yeah.
And, you've just got to respect that. So we did, and I do.
Paul McCartney came out and cleared the air a little bit and said, look, for those people
That
who
was very sweet of him to do that. I'm sure that, she got tons of letters saying, how dare you say that? I mean, because they like the idea of us being in a boxing ring, sort of fighting.
Also, it's good to have, people like having someone to demonize. People like having someone to blame, and you were the easy target, I guess.
Well, we know each other for such a long time, and he's a very sensitive and intelligent guy. So, of course, she understands what was going on, that it wasn't going on.
What looks like a Beatles breakthrough after all these years, one of music's longest-running feuds just might finally be over.
Works it out. Oh, they use the song title. Hey, I was ahead of you there. Come Together. What is that, a song? I thought if John loved her, there's got to be something. He's not stupid. Hey, yeah. Try to see it his way. I mean, yeah, there was probably like many emotions going on.
I think
at that time.
He genuinely did a kind of accounting of, various things that have gone on in this crazy long life that he's had, and he decided that it wasn't worth it to have this unfinished business.
There's a little drop in audio there. Maybe there was a copyright issue, and then you can mute it. In YouTube, you can mute that as part of the audio. There's a feature for that. So, yeah, man, it's definitely a rocky relationship. Can you call that a relationship between Paul and Yoko? I don't know. But it's, John was his friend, and John loved her, and he definitely saw that, so that's nice. And, love makes us do things that seem irrational to other people sometimes. Like, what are you doing? For you, when you're in the moment, it's just, you don't want to be apart from that person. And there's a lot of beauty in that, man. And it's great that people get to experience that kind of love. So, but yeah, the Beatles, I don't know. What do you think? Would they have carried on, or they was just ready to move on, even if there was no Yoko involved? I think so. Maybe it would have been a bit longer. Who knows? That's an alternate universe. Maybe it's happening over there. Maybe they're still making music over there, huh? And people get to enjoy them still to this day. Who knows? In that other universe. But what we have here, I'm very grateful for it. And I'm looking forward to get to know their music even more, and all of the solo projects as well. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.